Welcome to Explorer Classroom. My name is Vivette Dukes, and I am so glad that you're joining us today. Here in the United States, we're celebrating Women's History Month. From the women who have made history in the past, the women in your life today, and the young women watching today's show, we see you. We encourage our viewers to check out biographies about women, including our very own explorers, to learn from their legacy. At National Geographic, we use the power of science, exploration, education, and storytelling to illuminate and protect the wonder of our world. Explorer Classroom connects students worldwide with our National Geographic Explorers for short lessons and time for your questions. This school year, each month will be organized around a specific theme. This March, Explorer Classroom is exploring the importance of exploration, especially as a tool to help us understand what we can learn from our world and how we can better protect it. Today, our explorer is Ricardo Rocha. Ricardo is a conservation biologist from Portugal who specializes in tropical forests and island ecosystems. Recently, he's been studying bats in Brazil and Madagascar and answering questions about how bats are a helpful part of our world. He is also a professor at the University of Oxford, where he shares his passion for conservation with the next generation of researchers. Whether in a classroom or a jungle, Ricardo knows a lot about bats, and he's going to share some incredible things with you today. Before we get into today's lesson, I'd like to welcome our registered viewers who join us from around the globe. Special shout outs for today go to Anna L. Klein Elementary School, June Rose Calwood, Thomas Jefferson Middle School, Center Avenue Elementary School, Folsom Educational and Community Center, St. Andrews Middle School, and all the homeschoolers out there. Shout out to you. We are thrilled to have you all here with us. And with that, let's get this Explorer Classroom started. It's time to turn it over to you, Ricardo, to share all about bats. Take it away, Ricardo. You're muted, Ricardo. Let's unmute so we can hear you.
Oh, sorry. Hello, everyone. How are you all? How are you all doing? Thank you so much for the kind introduction, Viviette. I'm going to share my screen. Please let me know if you can see the globe. Are you able to see the globe now? Viviette?
Yes, I can see it. It looks great.
Thank you.
You're welcome. No problem.
So, hello, everybody. I'm going to start by showing where I am from and where I'm currently. So, I'm currently in the other side of the Atlantic. So, I was just told that all of you today are in the US. Well, I'm in the UK. And within the UK, I'm in the city that is called Oxford. So I work for the University of Oxford, where I do conservation biology. But I'm originally from a country slider down south that is called Portugal. And within Portugal, I'm from a tiny island called Madeira. And try to guess what these three places have in common. Well, if you answered multiple things, then you would be absolutely right. There's multiple similarities between these three different places. But one thing that they all have in common is that they all have bats. For instance, the US has around 50 bats, certainly more than 40 different types of bats. The UK has around 18 bats. The island where I'm from, Madeira, has only 3 different types of bats, but all of these places have bats. And I'm a bat biologist. I'm absolutely nuts about bats. And one of the things that I enjoy the most is to go to very distant places and study bat communities. So I look at their diversity, I look at what they are doing, how they behave. And despite the fact that I love bats, I'm absolutely crazy about bats. When I was a kid, this wasn't exactly the case. So this photo was taken when I visited the zoo and I was around 5 years old. And by this age, I had no idea that one day I would be working with bats. So not much later after I took this photo, I was given a book about an animal called the Mediterranean monk seal. And the Mediterranean monk seal is a very threatened seal that exists in the island where I'm from, Madeira. And when I was growing up, there was around between 6 and 8 individuals of this seal in Madeira. And with this, I learned a very important concept, that is the concept of conservation. And conservation is a set of actions, interventions that people tend to do to protect nature and to prevent the extinction of species. And from around the age at which I received the book, I was around 7 to 8 years old, I knew that I wanted to work in conservation. So I wanted to try to prevent species to become extinct. So try to remember this concept, conservation. Also, try to remember this other concept, that is optimism. So since I received the book until now, the population of seals in Madeira has increased from around 6 to 8 individuals to around 40 individuals. And this is the consequence of human action, of human interventions, namely conservation interventions, to try to improve the status of this animal. So this shows that if we come together and if we do the right things, we can actually improve the status of nature. So we can be optimistic about the future of species in the wild. So 2 important concepts, conservation and optimism. But something that I really want to tell you about today is superpowers. And in particular, I want to speak to you about the superpowers of bats. And bats have multiple superpowers. So one superpower that you probably already guessed is that bats can fly. And they can do this because bats have this wing membrane. So the wing of a bat is more or less our hand. So it's formed by the bones that we have in our hand as well, but these bones are more elongated in the case of bats, and they are united by this flap of skin that we call a wing membrane. And with this, they can fly, and some bat species fly really, really fast. So some bats can fly almost as fast as a cheetah can run. So they're really fast, or some species are really fast. So another superpower that bats have is the superpower of longevity. So there's this general rule in nature that small animals tend to have shorter lives than larger animals, but this does not tend to apply to bats. So mice tend to have a lifespan of around 2 years, but a similar sized bat can live more than 40 years. So this is another superpower of bats, longevity. And another superpower that they have, and this is a really special one, is one that is called echolocation. So I don't know if you've ever come across this word, but if you break it down, it gives you 2 different words. It gives you echo plus location. And this kind of gives you an idea of this process. So echolocation relates to the fact that bats can produce sounds that we cannot listen to without special devices, but these sounds are called ultrasounds. So bats produce these ultrasounds. This ultrasounds hits either obstacles or other animals and are reflected to the bats. So the echo of the sounds goes back to the bats. The bats process these echoes, and with that, they can build a mental picture of their surroundings. And this is how they go around at nighttime. Not all species of bats are nocturnal, so most are nocturnal. There's some exceptions, but they can go around in the dark with this echolocation capacity that they have. Something important is that not all bats echolocate. So there's some bats, and we can speak about that later, that don't have this capacity. So now that we've spoke a bit about the superpowers of bats, let's actually go to a place where there's a huge diversity of bats. So now we're jumping over the Atlantic again, and we're going to the Brazilian Amazon, to the largest rainforest on the planet. So we're going to this area that it's called the Biological Dynamics of Forest Fragments Project. This is a very special area in the central Amazon. So this is north of the city of Manaus in Brazil. And when you're in this particular site and you go above the canopy, so you climb above the trees, this is what you see. So you have this majestic landscape that you see green all around you. And for the last 40 years, multiple researchers have been here studying this deforestation. So they're trying to understand what happens to animal and plant communities when we destroy the forest. And myself and my colleagues, we were doing the exact same. So we were here trying to understand what happens to bats when you destroy the forest. And we did this by using multiple tools, multiple instruments. A key instrument that we have used during this research is what you can see here in the photo. So you can see that in my shoulder, I have this black thing, and this is a mist net. So, you know, nets that are used by fishermen to fish for fish. So these are similar nets, but they are used to capture bats. And each of these nets, so this bag here, I have a 14-meter mist net. So this is almost 3 times as long as a car. And these nets, when they are open, they're twice my height. So we use this to capture bats underneath the trees, so in the forest and the story. But also, we had this really long nets that we would set in the tree canopies, so very high above the floor. So around 20 meters above the forest floor, and these nets would fall down and would capture bats that would be flying underneath the canopy. Additionally, we had these devices that are called bat detectors. And these bat detectors, they're able to record the ultrasounds that I described previously. So I told you that bats go around with the help of echolocation by producing ultrasounds and processing the echoes. So we're able to record these ultrasounds, and with that, we have an idea of the identity of the bats that are going around in the landscape. And with all of this, we captured thousands of bats of multiple species. So we had more than 80 species in the area where we were studying. And these bats were very diverse between themselves. So we had bats that were orange, such as this one. The common name of this bat is actually yellow-shouldered bat, but for me, it's more orange than yellow. And this particular species feeds on fruits, but we had all sorts of other bats. So we had bats that are carnivorous, and they feed on small birds and even in other bats. There's some bats such as this one here in the photo that is a nectarivorous species, so he drinks nectar. And there's some other species such as this one that are frugivorous, so they consume fruits. And these particular ones are amazing food gardeners. So they go around the landscape after consuming the fruits and they spread the seeds of the fruits. And with this, they plant new forests. And one important thing that we discovered during our research is that once you cut down the forest, you start getting new forest. And part of this forest is planted by bats such as this one that I just described. And as time passes, and if you allow the forest to regenerate, you get some other bat species that have disappeared from the landscape after deforestation. So you have this process in which you have bats helping to plant new forest, and with that you have bats and other animals returning to areas where the forest had previously disappeared. So bats are in fact helping other species, and they are also helping us to plant new forest. And now let's jump over the Atlantic again, and let's go to a very special country called Madagascar. So I don't know if you have heard about this country or not, but this is one of the most outstanding countries on the planet for multiple reasons. And one of the reasons, it's its amazing wildlife, its amazing nature. So the area where I work in Madagascar is, again, rainforest, such as this one that you can see in the photo. So this area is called Hanomafana National Park. This is a word that relates to the fact that you have hot springs in Hanomafana, and Hanomafana means hot water. But one of the amazing things that they have here is a whole set of what is called endemic species. And this is another concept that I would like you to potentially learn today. I don't know if you came across this concept or not, but endemic species are species that are restricted to a given area. So this animal here in the photo, this is the ring-tailed lemur that you probably know from the movie Madagascar. This is an endemic species to Madagascar. In the whole world, this particular lemur only exists in Madagascar. And there's multiple other species that only exist in Madagascar. So this vangas, these birds that you can see here in the photo, there's more than 20 different vangas, and all of this only exists in Madagascar. They're endemic. This one, for instance, is the comet's moth. Is one of the biggest moths in the planet. So a moth is a nocturnal butterfly. Again, only exists in Madagascar. And moths are an interesting segue to bats, because bats are major predators of moths, of nocturnal butterflies. And there's a whole set of bats that only exist in Madagascar as well. Around half of the bat species that exist in Madagascar, well, actually 80% of the bat species that exist in Madagascar only exist in Madagascar, are endemic. And a fair share of these bats are threatened by deforestation. So what I told you that was happening in the Amazon and we wanted to study. So when we destroy the forest, this is called deforestation. And this is one of the main causes of disappearance of wildlife in Madagascar. And one of the reasons why this deforestation is happening is due to agriculture. And much of the agriculture that takes place in Madagascar relates to the farming of rice. And what you can see in this photo are extensive rice fields that tend to occur in multiple areas in Madagascar. And we wanted to know if these landscapes with rice fields are used by bats. So my colleagues and I did the exact same that we did in the Amazon. So we went around with mist nets, we went around with bat detectors, and we tried to quantify the bats that were around. And we discovered that these landscapes are used by multiple bat species. But here we went one step further than from the work that we did in the Amazon. So instead of asking only which bats were present, we asked what are these bats eating? And we asked this because we wanted to know if the bats in these agricultural landscapes were consuming agricultural pests. And agricultural pests are mostly insects or arthropods that tend to damage agriculture. So they tend to damage the crops that are produced by the farmers. So if the bats are in fact eating agricultural pests, they will be helping the farmers, because otherwise the farmers would potentially need to use pesticides. And that's not the best thing, neither for the environment nor for people. So if bats can help the farmers in reducing the amount of agricultural pests, that's a good thing. And we found exactly that. So bats in Madagascar are consuming multiple agricultural pests. And not only that, interestingly enough, they're also consuming mosquitoes. And some of these mosquitoes do pass some very nasty diseases to humans. So bats are helping us in multiple fronts. And they are not only helping humans. So since the farmers oftentimes need to cut down forests to increase their agricultural land, if the bats are helping the farmers, and with that, the farmers don't need so much land, there's more area to be spared for wildlife, such as these frogs that you can see here in the photo, or to these chameleons. And both the frog that I showed you and this chameleon are, again, endemic to Madagascar. They only exist in Madagascar. So if we can conserve the places where these animals live, we're actually helping them in a very important way. So the two concepts that I really wanted you to keep track today were conservation and optimism. But previously, I also spoke about superpowers. And I want to get back to superpowers. And this time, it's not about the superpowers of bats. It's about my superpowers, your superpowers, our collective superpowers. And one superpower that we all have is the superpower of curiosity. So I really stress that you should go around and try to learn as much as you can about nature. And you can ask, for instance, your professors, your parents, if you have endemic species in your surroundings. Is there any particular species that only exists in the area where you live, in your surroundings? Another superpower that we all have is the superpower of sharing. So we can share with our friends, with our colleagues, with our family, what we've learned about nature, and we can try to ask them to conserve nature. And with that, we can come together, collaborate to do whatever we can do to conserve bats or birds. We can put bat boxes, we can put some bird feeders in our schools, and we all can collaborate to conserve nature. And with that, I'm sure that we can have a future that we can all be proud, and we can all coexist with all these wonderful creatures, bats and other creatures that share our surroundings. Thank you. That was all today.
Thank you again to Ricardo and all the students and teachers watching. We hope you join many more of our events. Our next event for ages 9 through 14 will be in 2 weeks on Thursday, March 23rd, with explorer Dalal Hannah to learn about the secrets of streams. So go ahead and register for this event and more at natgeoed.org/explorer classroom. You can request a chance to be featured on screen. And fellow teachers, we've also created an interactive guide for you to share with your students to take them on a learning journey with each of our special guests. Find the Explorer Mindset in Action Guide and Teacher Edition linked on each event registration page. Have a great day, everyone. And remember, stay curious and keep exploring. Bye.
See you. Bye. Thank you.